DND number 4. Weeds grow. In Jesus' name. Chapter 2. Mark closed his locker and gazed down the senior hall. She was running toward him. Man, oh man, Jana was beautiful. Her long blonde hair swinging back and forth with the motion of her body, her skirt flipping up to expose muscular cheerleader thighs. He had to force himself to look at her face as she approached, and she appeared anxious and worried. "What's wrong, Jana?" he asked as he pulled her close and brushed the hair from her face. She pulled at his hand. "Come on, Mark, it's Joey. He's at it again." "Ah, not again." He broke into a run, leaving his girl to catch up. It was easy enough to find Joey once he got outside, even though he couldn't see Joey himself. The crowd that had gathered consisted of a number of students who looked more like bikers, and about half the football team who had been on their way to practice, and all the girls who usually accompanied them. Mark pushed his way through the line of boys. The kid, known as Bean, was standing off to one side, holding his arm, being attended to by another who was bleeding profusely from the nose, and Joey was on the ground, along with the kid who had not been smart enough to just give up. Little Joe's muscular thighs were wrapped around the kid's neck. Calmly, Mark knelt down beside his brother. "Let him go, Joey." Joey never looked up. "I'm going to break his neck first." "Joe, you really don't want to do that. Come on now, little bro. Let him go. He's not worth it." Joey looked up into Mark's calm face. Of course, his brother was right. He sighed, released his hold, and sprang to his feet. The kid lay on the ground, gasping for breath. Immediately, the crowd began to break up before a teacher or administrator showed up. Mark's offensive line gathered around. "We had your little bro for you, Mark," one said. "We wouldn't let anything happen to him." "We witnessed the whole thing, man," another said. "Joe was awesome. They started it. I'll vouch for that. Joe was walking along toward the auditorium, and I saw a bunch of guys running all of a sudden, and they all came at him at the same time." "Yeah, Mark, they started it, but little bro finished it." He patted Joey's back. "Thanks, guys. Tell Coach I'm on my way." "You got it." Mark looked Joey over. His face was scratched on one side. "You okay?" Joey huffed out a breath. "Sure. Look, I know what you're thinking. Man, I tried to walk away, but the three of them jumped me all at once. I had no choice." "I believe you, Joe. You know, I know how it is. But you know Mom's going to freak, and Ricky's going to say that you always have a choice." Joey wiped his nose on his sleeve and checked for blood, then chuckled. "Yeah, that's exactly what Ricky will say." "Well," Mark said thoughtfully, "maybe we can avoid the subject this time. They don't have to know." "Yeah, maybe. Ricky won't be there, but we'll have to get past Mom." "That shouldn't be a problem. So, you going home or what?" "No, I have a drama club meeting." Mark rolled his eyes but said nothing. Joey had already played parts in 2 of Ricky's movies. Mark didn't understand why his little brother insisted on being involved in the little amateur school club. "Meet me at the car after practice." Joey nodded. "I'll be there." Mark turned toward the gym. "I like the people," Joey called after him. Mark turned back. "Huh?" "That's why I go. I like the kids. It's fun, and there's no pressure." Mark smiled. Sometimes it was spooky how it seemed they could read each other's thoughts. "And I bet that cute girl with the streaky hair ain't bad either." Joey grinned. "Not bad at all." New scene. Shelley, Beth, and Jeffy burst through the kitchen door loaded with packages. The 2 girls had hit it off immediately. It didn't surprise Shelley. Jeffy loved everyone, and everyone loved Jeffy. She had an aura about her. She was truly like an angel, a very talkative angel. The shopping trip turned out well. They had quickly purchased a starter wardrobe for Beth. "Well," Shelley began, "we need to show Beth around and get her settled in her room. Which one do you think, Jeffy? The blue or the rose?" 7-year-old Jeffy wrinkled her nose and pretended to think really hard. "The blue. It will match Beth's eyes." "How many extra rooms do you have?" Beth asked. "We have 6 extra bedrooms upstairs, depending on who's home, but I always like to say we have enough for everyone." They walked from the kitchen, which ran along the back of the house. The next room offered a huge dining room table sitting in front of glass doors that led to a giant several-tiered deck, an elaborately landscaped swimming pool set up like a tropical island, and finally the ocean. "Oh my," was all Beth could say as she gazed out the doors. I know, Shelley commented. Kind of takes your breath away, doesn't it? I grew up in much humbler circumstances, and when I first came here, that's all I said for about a month. Beth looked her over. Oh, really? Where did you grow up? In a tiny house in Georgia. And then I married my first husband and I moved to another tiny house. It's still there. We stay there when we travel to Georgia sometimes. Come on, I'll show you around. She motioned to her right. Those are the back steps. They lead up to the bedrooms. Everyone at our end of the hall usually uses those steps instead of the big ones in the front hall. They moved from the giant dining room to a great room via 3 large steps that ran the width of the dining room. The large front room looked more like a hotel lobby. It sported 3 couches, several antique tables and chairs, magnificent works of art, vases, and mammoth entertainment center. Heading to the left out of that room was the entrance foyer with a curving staircase. Beth looked up at the beautifully carved wooden banister that overlooked the foyer as they climbed the steps. It was like living in a very modern castle. Once upstairs, they headed to the left. Mine and Eric's bedroom is the last one on the right, just over the dining room and overlooking the ocean. This one is mine, Jeffy said, opening the door of a room across from her mom's. Beth stepped in and took the tour with Jeffy, pulling her along. The room was purple and pretty and included things that weren't usually found in a little girl's room. Oh, there were the usual dolls, a few anyway, but mostly there were books, computers, science kits, a real doctor's bag, a large work table, and by the window an easel with a lovely painting on canvas of the front lawn. Beth glanced out the window and was surprised to see that the painting was amazingly accurate and detailed, including the fountain and lush flowers. She gazed across the manicured lawn to the security gate they'd driven through. It was spectacular. Did you do this? Beth asked, motioning to the painting. Uh-huh. Mommy says I'm getting better and better. She loves flowers, and I like to paint pictures for her, but I really like to draw people. Would you like to see all my drawings? Another time, Jeffy, Shelley laughed. Let's finish showing the house. There were 6 guest bedrooms, the rose-colored room next to Jeffy's, and the blue room next to Eric and Shelley's room, and then a green room, a brown room, a yellow, and lastly a white room whose doors were the only ones visible from the entrance foyer. If you turn right at the top of the stairs, you'll find Mark and Joey's rooms, and Ricky, and then Bree. You have 5 kids? Beth asked. I have 3 from my first marriage, Bree, Mark, and Joey. Bree is 27. You've probably heard of her, Brianna Adams. You're kidding. You're Brianna Adams' mother? Yes, I'm her mother. That's crazy. You don't look old enough. Shelley smiled with pleasure at the compliment. Well, I was barely 16 when I had her. Sometimes people think we're sisters. I bet that makes her real mad. Oh, no, we're very close. Well, anyway, I can't believe I'm in the home where Brianna Adams lives. Well, what's more, my husband is Ricky Keno's father. Really? Wow, Ricky Keno is the, sorry. Daddy doesn't approve of cursing even in jest, but he says profanity is merely a form of expression, and Ricky can express himself any way he wants since he's a grown-up, but I can't. Not yet. Ricky doesn't live here, Shelley added. He moved out a few years ago to a ridiculously giant penthouse in Los Angeles, but he comes home to visit when he can. And Brianna, does she live here? Yes. She likes to spend as much time with her brothers and sister as she can when she's not working. As I said, we're very close. She's filming on location in Florida right now. Beth nodded. And who were the others you mentioned? My sons, Mark and Joey. Mark is a senior in high school and Joey is a sophomore. And what's up there? Beth asked, pointing to another short flight of steps just off the balcony. Oh, up there is what the boys used to call the space room. There's a room full of TV monitors up there. When security is tight, we can actually have someone watch the monitors. There's cameras everywhere on the property. Beth nodded. Well, this place is really something. It's so big. It seemed like forever from the security gate out by the road to the front door. Shelley laughed. It's not quite a mile, but it does seem longer. Beth nodded. It's a real pretty drive, with all the gardens and fountain and stuff. How do people get through the security gate, like to make deliveries and stuff? They have to press a button, and we'll answer the intercom, punch in a code, and buzz them through. Come on, let's go back down. At the bottom of the stairs, they turned down a hallway that led back once again to the kitchen and then down toward the wing of the house that was under the boys' bedrooms. Shelley showed Beth a library, a study, a playroom, and a trophy room. And from that hallway, they took stairs down to the lower level. Beth was surprised to find an entire workout studio, sparring mats, a soundproof music studio complete with the largest drum set Beth had ever seen, along with a prodigious keyboard and a room devoted entirely to weaponry. Wow, look at all this deadly looking stuff, Beth remarked. Yeah, Daddy and Ricky are weapons experts. Joey is learning. I know a bow staff routine. Daddy's going to teach me a psi form, and Ricky promised we're going to start on the nunchucks real soon. So you do all the martial arts stuff too? Beth asked, surprised. Uh-huh. I'm going to be a black belt soon. I train with Daddy every morning. He says I'm almost as good a student as Mommy was, except I talk too much, and I'm working on that. They went back upstairs and circled to the kitchen. Jeffy, why don't you help Beth get her things up to her room? Shelley said. Oh, that's okay. I don't need help. Well, that's what everyone says, Jeffy put in. I think it's just because I look really small, but I can do more than you think, and I'm great to talk to. Beth grinned. I just bet you are. Well then, Jeffy, I guess it's you and me. However, before they could gather Beth's things, Ricky came striding in through the kitchen door. Ricky! Ricky! Jeffy cried, arms outstretched. She was immediately swooped up in his arms and spun around as she giggled. Shelley was next, and once he put her down, he immediately turned to the pretty girl standing near the kitchen table. He put his hands to his heart and sighed. Oh, really, Shelley, you shouldn't have, but since you did, I just love it. A beautiful new little doll for me to play with? Jeffy giggled. She's not a doll. She's our new friend, she proclaimed. Ricky eyed her. Really? Beth frowned at him. I'm the type of doll that little boys shouldn't play with, she said with a sneer. You might get hurt. Ricky moved closer. Oh, really? Let me see. He reached up to touch her face, but she slapped his hand away. Behave yourself, Rick, Shelley ordered. Beth, this is Ricky. Rick, this is Beth. She's going to be our guest for a while. Interesting, Ricky said softly, then turned to Beth. Welcome to heaven. Beth only pressed her lips together. So, Beth, Ricky said, how old are you? Old enough. He nodded with a smile. I'll keep that in mind. Jeffy took Beth's hand to lead her upstairs to her room. Come on, Beth. Don't worry about Ricky. He's really nice. And funny, too. Ricky watched them leave. Let me guess, Shell. Beth is your new project. Shelley frowned. She's not a project. She's a human being. Ricky stood waiting, eyebrows raised. Okay. She has some problems that I want to help her with, so sit down and I'll tell you all about it. Ricky listened intently, and she barely finished the telling by the time the girls came back downstairs. Shelley rose. All settled in? Well, there wasn't much, Beth said. Oh, we'll fix that soon. Come on, you can help me start dinner. Beth's face registered surprise. What? Shelley asked. Beth shrugged. All this money and you have no one to cook for you? Ricky laughed. Believe me, we would all love to have someone else do the cooking. However, Shelley needs all the practice she can get. He ducked barely in time to miss a black eye. Her fighting skills, on the other hand, are nothing to mess with. Shelley nodded in satisfaction. I actually enjoy cooking. It's relaxing, but we do have someone come in once a week to help with some of the cleaning and the laundry. Must be nice. Oh, it is. It took me a while to get used to it. We're all pretty self-sufficient. We clean up behind ourselves. Everyone changes their own bed linens and personal stuff like that. Rosa is a lady who used to help Eric back when Ricky was little. And her niece, Lily, is who helps us now. She is such a sweet girl. She's in college and says the extra money really comes in handy. Okay, well, let's get started. Shelley handed Beth some carrots and a knife and a cutting board. So, Beth began, turning to Ricky, Shelley is your stepmother, right? Right. My mother died when I was 11. My father met Shelley when he recruited her as his student for the Mart 8 years ago. Best thing that ever happened to him, or me, for that matter. She's the greatest. He winked at Shelley as she turned and smiled at him. And then she gave birth to this little monkey, and she's so cute. We think we'll keep her. Jeffy giggled as Ricky picked her up and sat with her in his lap. Beth smiled. She had to agree. Jeffy was adorable. She had long black hair that fell in large curls down her back like a Hawaiian princess, big brown eyes, and skin that glowed like molten gold mixed with cream. Her nose was tiny and turned up, and she had a perfect little rose-colored mouth. Ricky was kissing her cheeks and tickling her, and Jeffy laughed a deep belly laugh and squirmed around trying to get free. Jeffy, is that a nickname or her real name? Beth asked. It's her nickname, Shelley answered. I wanted to name her my favorite flower, which is dandelion. Dandelion, Ricky said, rolling his eyes. Shelley turned without apology. And the kids were adamant that I not name her dandelion, so I asked what the French word is for dandelion, and I told her there is no French word for dandelion. La petite fleur jaune, Ricky said. You speak French? Beth asked. He speaks 5 languages, Jeffy answered. And so la petite fleur jaune literally means the little flower yellow, Shelley said. I liked that yellow in French is jaune. It's like the month of June, the first month of summer. It sounds yellow to me, so somehow it all got put together and Jeffy got named Juneflower. Juneflower, that is a very cool name, Beth said to Jeffy. And then Mark and Joey started calling me by my initials, and then they just started calling me Jeffy. And I don't mind. Well, it's kind of cute, Beth told her with a smile. So when will Mark and Joey be home? Soon. Mark had football practice, and Joey had a drama club meeting. Shelley turned and watched Beth a moment as she cut up veggies for the salad. Working in the kitchen wasn't new to Beth, Shelley surmised. Dinner was almost ready by the time Eric came through the door, much in the same way Ricky had, scooping up Jeffy and Shelley in giant bear hugs. He offered Beth a polite hello, much warmer than earlier in the day, and Beth was able to catch a glimpse of what had attracted Shelley to him. He had to be around 50, but he didn't look like it. He had broad shoulders and a trim waist and what she thought of as hippie hair pulled back in a tail. Beth decided the dark eyes, handsome face, and warm smile all had been passed on to his son. Nevertheless, she watched the men warily. They were strong, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. She could sense it. She could almost feel the power that emanated from them. They could make anyone feel utterly protected or very afraid. But she wasn't afraid. She could barely keep herself from glaring at Ricky. He was so very cocky, so self-assured, and he and his father had murdered a man and gotten away with it. Looking at Ricky, she realized it would be easy to forget that. He was a gorgeous, hunky male with a totally hot body. She remembered him in earlier movies. He'd had long hair then. His father still did, but now Ricky wore his hair short. It was thick and black, and a lock of it fell over onto his forehead. It made her sick to think of how the world seemed to revere him. She would not be seduced by his charisma, however. She was here for justice, and justice would be done. The front door slammed. We're home. We'll be right down, Mark called. Okay, Shelley called back. Ricky, however, was not fooled. They always came in the kitchen door like everyone else. He slipped out of the kitchen and quickly up the stairs. Hold it, he ordered, just as the boys were creeping down the hall. They stopped and turned. Hey, Rick. Didn't know you were here. How's it going? Mark asked. Not bad, not bad, Ricky said casually as he scrutinized them. And you? Did you guys have a good day at school? Sure, no problems. Then you won? The boys looked at each other, then back at their stepbrother, who also happened to be their martial arts master. They loved Ricky like a brother, practically worshipped him, had the utmost respect for him. But man, it was impossible to get anything past him. That was somewhat frustrating. Also frustrating was the fact that the one time they tried to keep a secret, Ricky would have to be home. Joey smiled nervously. Of course I won. Ricky's jaw tensed. How many times do we have to go over this, Joe? Mark jumped in to defend his brother. He had no choice, Ricky. There were 3 of them, and they jumped him all at once. They jumped you out of the blue? Joey shrugged. Well, not exactly. They followed me across campus, yelling stuff, daring me to fight them. You know how it is. He ignored everything they said, but that only fueled the fire. Know what I mean? Mark added. I know exactly what you mean. Nevertheless, there is always a choice. Always. Mark and Joey looked at each other before they burst out laughing. What? Ricky asked. Well, you said exactly what we said you would say, Mark answered, still chuckling. Is that so? Ricky asked. I didn't realize I'd become so predictable. Or maybe I should turn your instruction over to Dad. I'm sure he won't be so cliche. No, no, that's okay, both boys said at once. Ricky smiled. His father was a legendary teacher. He was the best. He was also the hardest. And Shelley would vouch for that. So, you want to keep this one quiet? No problem, but it'll cost you. That's blackmail, Joey complained. Ricky shrugged. It all comes back to choices, doesn't it? You always have a choice, and there are consequences for what you choose. So, what are the consequences? Joey asked. My car could use a coat of wax. Joey sighed. Fine. I still say I had no choice. Besides, part of this is your fault. Mine? Yeah. Why do you think they're always trying to jump me? Because I'm your stepbrother. Because you trained me. Because I've been in some of your movies. Ricky frowned. Well, would you have it any other way? Well, no, of course not. Ricky grinned. See? Choices. Come on. Go get cleaned up for dinner, and I'll see if I can figure out something to keep you from being a target. New scene. Dinner at the Keno's was quite pleasant, Beth observed. Everyone listened when anyone spoke. They all seemed to be genuinely interested in her. Beth gave them very little information, yet none of them really pressed her. She wondered if they'd been instructed not to, or if the family in general had respect for the privacy of others. She noticed that when Eric spoke, he did so very softly. He expected others' attention when he spoke, and he got it. Mark and Joey seemed like regular high school guys, even though they lived with famous people. And Shelley seemed truly sweet, with a heart full of love and compassion. Of course, that was what Beth had been told she would act like, and that was what got her into the house. Her eyes met Ricky's. He'd been watching her. She raised her chin defiantly, a look she'd perfected. Ricky grinned. Beth turned to Mark. So, do you know where you want to go to college? Mark smiled at her. I have a few offers right now. UCLA is recruiting me. USC, Hawaii, Washington State, Arizona, Colorado. So is the University of Texas. And then there's several other smaller colleges. It really depends on how my season goes this year. She smiled sweetly at him. I predict you'll have the best year ever. Ricky frowned and glanced at his father, who was also frowning. Beth turned her smile on Jeffy. And what do you want to be when you grow up? Jeffy giggled. I want to be king of the world. You mean queen, Joey corrected her. Jeffy frowned. No, I don't. Daddy said I can be anything I want to be, and I want to be king, not queen. Jeffy, girls are queens, boys are kings. Joey looked up at Eric, appealing to him. Eric shrugged. Well, I did say she can be anything she wants to be. However, Jeffy, what Joey says is also correct. Girls are queens and boys are kings. But they both have the same power, so why not be a queen? Because king sounds better. What makes it sound better? Jeffy thought, I don't know. I guess because it sounds more powerful. Well, there's a reason why it seems more powerful. Why? Because although I said kings and queens hold the same power, they are still different, because physically men and women are different. Men are stronger than women physically. That's science, and you should do some research on that. Okay, I will. She sat back thinking and frowning. Good. Besides, the world already has a king, right? She nodded. Jesus is the king. Right. And are you smarter than Jesus? Ha. Of course not. He knows every single thing in the world and in the whole universe. Then why do you want to take his place? Oh, well, I don't really. I love him. That's what I thought. So search your heart a minute and tell me, why do you think you wanted to be king? It just sounded like the best thing to be. The best thing we can be is different for each person. But one thing is the same, and that is the best thing we can be is what God made us, and strive to be what he intended us to be. And did God make you a girl? Yes. Then don't strive to be a boy. Instead, strive to be the best girl you can be. I know you want to be a good martial artist, so strive to be strong and fast. I also know you want to be the smartest, so keep working on that. If each of us does our best to make the best out of what God created us to be, then it doesn't matter if we're a boy or a girl. See, Jeffy said, nodding her head at Joey in victory. It doesn't matter. Joey laughed. Out of everything he said, that's what you got out of it? She smiled. Well, I sort of twisted it around a little bit. More than a little bit, young lady, Shelley put in. Jeffy frowned. What do you think, Beth? Does it matter if you're a boy or a girl? Beth glanced up at Ricky. Oh, it matters a lot. It does? Jeffy asked. Sure. There's a big difference between being a boy and being a girl. Is there? Ricky asked. By all means, fill us in. Beth dipped her finger in her water glass and used it to wet her full bottom lip. A boy, for example, Beth said slowly, has sex whenever he can. The table became eerily quiet, and Shelley glanced at Eric, wondering if he would put a stop to the topic of conversation. She hoped not, because she was kind of interested in what Beth had to say. It might give her a clue as to where Beth's problem stemmed from. It seemed Eric, too, was interested. And a girl? Ricky asked. And a girl has sex whenever she wants. Mark choked on his water, and Joey snickered. That's enough, Eric said quietly. Shelley pressed her lips tightly together to keep from giggling, and Eric rolled his eyes at her. I know about sex, Jeffy protested. Well, good for you, Mark said, but how are you doing in math? He stood and reached for Jeffy's hand. Come on, Jeffy, let's get your homework done. The family stood and began clearing dishes. To Beth's amazement, except for Mark and Jeffy, the entire family helped clean the kitchen. New scene. Ricky walked along the beach with his father as the sun began to set. Silently, they turned out toward the water, as they had countless times since Ricky was old enough to walk, to witness the incredibly beautiful sight. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Ricky turned his gaze toward his father. He was a good, strong man, the best man Ricky had ever known or even known of. An incredible father, a loving husband, a brilliant businessman, a loyal friend, a superb martial artist, and even more so a teacher. Ricky had turned to him many times for counsel, and he was about to do it again. Eric turned to face his son. There's a problem. Ricky smiled. Is that a question or a statement? A statement. Puzzled, Ricky ran a hand through his hair. Are you speaking about me or this Beth person? Well, I was referring to you, even though I believe Beth is or soon will be. Ricky nodded. I agree with you. Something not quite right there. Yeah, I can't put my finger on it, but let's keep on our toes, Eric said. I'll do my best to keep an eye on her. Why did you even allow Shelley to bring her here? Eric raised his eyebrows. Allow Shelley? Ricky laughed. Yeah, that was a stupid question, huh? Eric eyed his son as the darkness grew around them. Well? Ricky nodded and sighed. I guess what I wanted to talk to you about is, well, I'm not happy. Eric was silent for some time as he considered the best way to help. And finally he spoke. And you're here to discuss the cause of this unhappiness? I was hoping you could help me figure out what the cause is and how to fix it. Eric shook his head and spoke sharply. No, you weren't. You know what it is. I do. I'm not so sure about that, Ricky said softly. It was the defeat in his voice that got to Eric. When did you lose touch with yourself, Rick? Ricky lowered his head. I'm not sure. Okay, then let me ask you a more specific question. What particular incident triggered you coming home today? Ricky sighed. I guess when I woke up this morning next to a girl I don't know. Ricky watched for his father's reaction, which was only a slight nod of the head. If he was disappointed, he didn't show it. Of course, he didn't have to. And I'm guessing that indiscretion was not the first? Ricky's lips pressed together and he shook his head. When you chose that path, did you have an excuse? An excuse? What rationale made you override all you knew about why that path is no good? I don't know. I mean, women are always throwing themselves at me. It wasn't a conscious decision. I really didn't think about it too much. I just finally gave in. And after the first time, the second time was easier. Of course, that's the way sin works. Ricky breathed deeply and hung his head, listened to the waves as they crashed on the shore. Are you about to preach? I don't think I need to do that. You know all the reasons we choose to live the way we do. You know that there are over 180 scriptures about sexual immorality. There's a reason for that. God knows and understands the power of our sex drive. It's strong, but that doesn't mean we can't master it. Ricky pushed his bare foot through the wet sand. I guess I wasn't exactly trying to master it. Well, that much is obvious. And your honesty is good, but you know, Rick, I'm not the one you should be confessing to. Ricky nodded. Well, that's why I came home, so I can clear my head and talk to God. As if choreographed, they both stepped closer to the water to allow it to bathe their feet. I feel like there's another reason you're home. What's that? Eric sighed. You know the answer to that question, which tells me that you're not being one with yourself. I'm trying to be, Ricky said, his irritation showing. You don't try, Rick. You do. Ricky looked up, smiling. You sound like Yoda. Eric allowed a small twitching of his lips. Seriously, do you not remember how to regain the oneness? Well, if I did, I wouldn't be here bothering you. Back to basics, Ricky. What are the basics I taught you over and over again? Ricky went over the old mantra in his mind before he spoke it. Patience, a calm spirit, let go, allow, always be honest, trust God. Eric waited while his son considered his answer. Ricky looked into his father's eyes. Honesty? Pleased, Eric nodded. You know, of course, that you cannot be dishonest with yourself and still be at one. You must be true to yourself in order to feel true joy. Well, what do you think I'm being dishonest about? Eric surprised Ricky by giving him the answer to that question. About what you want in life. Ricky looked down. His father saw everything so easily. Ricky had been denying what he wanted for years, and it was destroying him. Yet saw no noble way to go after his desires. He looked up. What if what I want, even what I need, isn't the best thing? If it's what you truly want, then it is the best thing. Trust God. Dad, stop being so philosophical for just a moment and help me. I'm doing my best, Rick. If a man is born an artist and all he wants in the world to do is paint, then he should at least pursue painting, even if others tell him he should do something else. He can try to do what others tell him to do. He may even be successful at it. Yet until he's honest about what he truly wants, he will not experience true joy. I'm not speaking of my career, Eric sighed, nor am I. I'm speaking of honesty. He touched Ricky's shoulder. Do you want me to say that it's okay to want what or who it is you want? Ricky's head jerked up. Then you do know what I'm talking about. I know you've been denying what you feel for a long time. I wondered when it would catch up to you. What do I do, Dad? I just told you the answer to that question. Ricky drew a deep breath in frustration and dug his toes into the sand. Eric had mercy. Son, you have to be honest with yourself. If you love her, go after her. Well, what difference would it make? She doesn't love me back. Are you sure? Are you so sure? It almost sounds to me like you're afraid. Will you let your fear keep you from going after what you truly want? Face that fear. Tell her how you feel. Give her your love. What she does with that love is up to her, but you must be brave enough to put it out there. How can you know whether it's for the best if you never test it? Eric smiled at his son. Remember when I refused to let Shelley know how I felt about her? I was miserable. You told me to jump in the water and swim around. Ricky grinned. It seems like just yesterday. Eric smiled and turned back out toward the sea. Your promiscuity is in an attempt to fulfill a need. No man was meant to be celibate. You either go after who it is you want or you settle for less. And you've never seemed to be the type who settles. Pushing his hands into his pockets, Ricky sighed and looked down. Thanks, Dad. Eric put an arm around his son. I love you, Rick. When you were little, I didn't think I'd ever be able to love you more, and yet every minute of every day proves me wrong on that. I could never have asked for a better son. You're a good man. You're a good son, a good brother, and you're going to make some lucky woman a good husband. And then one day, some very lucky little boy or girl is going to be very happy to have you as their father." Ricky's eyes moistened, and he swallowed hard. "That will be very cool." "Yes, yes, it will." He looked his son over. "You're not centered. How long will you be home?" He shrugged his shoulders. "As long as it takes, I guess." "Good. Train with me." Ricky bowed to his father. "I'd be honored." Back inside the house, Ricky made his rounds. It was nice to be home among people he loved and who loved him, and saying good night to everyone was always a part of his routine. First, he kissed his father's wife on the cheek and told her it was great to be home. She hugged him warmly and told him it was nice to have him home. Next, he headed upstairs to see Jeffy. However, as he neared Jeffy's room, he noticed the door to Beth's room was ajar. He glanced in as he passed and came to a complete halt. He could see clearly that she was in the bathroom, taking a bubble bath with the door wide open. He watched her as she dribbled water over her body, humming to herself as she did. His eyes narrowed as he thought of Mark and Joey just down the hall, with an abundance of teenage hormones rushing through their bodies, and wondered just what kind of a game was this girl playing. She looked up and their eyes met. Slowly, seductively, she rose up out of the water. She stepped out of the tub, walked out of the bathroom, and straight to where Ricky stood at her bedroom door. And without taking her eyes off him, she softly closed the door in his face. Shaking his head, he moved on to tell Jeffy good night. Of course, that was never simple. The little magpie told him about her school project, about her science teacher who'd been wrong about some principle of physics, about her love of some new music she just learned, and about what she intended to wear to school the next day. She'd kissed him and hugged him and as a final request, asked him to please be nice to Beth. Next, he stopped by Mark's room. The door was open, but Ricky knocked out of respect for privacy, and Joey was there, and the boys' conversation came to an abrupt halt. "Mind if I come in?" Ricky said. "Of course not," Mark answered. "So what's up?" Ricky asked. "Not much," Mark said. "Same old." "You guys keep up with your training?" "I am," Joey said. "But now that school's back in session, I may be down to once a week of a formal class." Ricky nodded. "Well, I'm going to be home for a while if you want to train with Dad and I." In their household, whenever the subject matter centered around the martial arts and their training, their discipline and respect for their art and their teacher always took precedence over their familial relationships, which is why when Ricky made the offer to Joey, the young man rose and bowed. "I'd be honored." Ricky bowed to his student before turning to Mark. "I know football is taking up your time. You need anything, though, you let me know." "Thanks, Rick," Mark said. Ricky nodded and looked the young man over. "You and Jana still together?" "Yep." "Getting any yet?" "Geez, Rick." Ricky grinned when Joey burst out laughing. "I just thought I'd stay in the loop." "Well, I'll try to keep you informed," Mark said dryly. "Look, it's not my place to say anything, but before you do anything, you might want to discuss things with someone like Dad or your mom." Mark looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Yeah, not your mom, but maybe Pastor Cole." Mark's eyebrows raised. Ricky shrugged. "This is not my area of expertise. You can forget I said anything. It's just that I've recently stumbled and am suffering the consequences, so I was just trying to help you learn from my mistakes." Mark nodded his head. His older, much respected stepbrother and martial arts master was humbling himself in front of him, and the effect was, instead of Mark losing respect for Ricky, he gained even more respect. He bowed to show that respect. Touched by that, Ricky had to clear his throat. "Well, good night, guys. Back at you." New scene. Bree turned abruptly at the call for help, her hand shielding her eyes from the sun. She and Nick both scanned the water, but Bree spotted the man first. "There," she pointed, pulling her hand away from Nick's grasp. He grabbed it again. "Where do you think you're going?" She jerked her hand away. "I'm going out to help that man." "You go see if you can find a lifeguard." She started toward the water, but Nick grabbed her arm. "Stop. You're not going out there in that water." "Nick, don't be silly. I'm an extremely strong swimmer. I was on the swim team in high school, and I lifeguarded in the summer. Please go find help," she said, pulling away. And without waiting for his reply, she took off running toward the waves. Within seconds, she was swimming out towards the man, and some people who'd been fishing off a nearby dock pointed toward the drama taking place. Nick's jaw clenched. Nevertheless, he did as Bree instructed. Where was the lifeguard anyway? He passed the tower and went to the station. The lifeguard was emerging as Nick approached. Where have you been? Nick yelled at the young kid. Sir? There's someone drowning out there while you're messing around. The young man quickly grabbed his gear. I just came on duty. Where's the victim? Nick pointed to where Bree was already pulling the man toward the beach. The lifeguard took off, speaking into his radio as he ran. Nick turned and followed. By the time Nick got back to Bree, there was a crowd. The lifeguard knelt by the man, speaking into his radio. Bree stood by, breathing heavy, her hands on her knees. Is he okay? Bree asked. He's alive, thanks to you, the lifeguard answered. A moment later, a jeep arrived and a team hopped out to attend to the man, who apparently had had a bad case of cramps. That's Brianna Adams, someone in the crowd called out. Phones were pulled, pictures and video taken. Bree grabbed Nick's hand. Let's get out of here before there's a story in the paper. He said nothing as they made their way toward the hotel. He waited to get to their room before he exploded. He grabbed her by the shoulders. When I tell you no, you better listen to me. Her brow wrinkled before she smiled. You're kidding, right? He moved closer to her and spoke in a low, menacing tone. Do I look like I'm kidding around? Bree stepped back. What's your problem? I don't appreciate you trying to make me look bad. Make you look bad? What are you talking about? I wasn't trying to do anything but help that man. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Ooh, look, that's Brianna Adams. She jumped in and saved that man while her bodyguard stands by and does nothing. She shrugged. Well, then I guess you should have jumped in too. His hand snapped out and grabbed her by the ponytail, pulling her close. Listen, you little witch. You better watch how you talk to me. I'm not one of your minions. Bree reached up and tried to loosen his grip on her hair. Let me go, she ordered. He tugged hard. You don't give me orders. I'm the man in this relationship, and I don't care that you're the Brianna Adams. I don't care if you're the Queen of England. She grimaced. Ow, let me go, Nick. You're blowing this all out of proportion. Maybe, he said softly, or maybe I'm just reeling you in now, before you think you can walk all over me. Who's walking on who? She said, wincing in pain as he tugged on her hair again. He pulled her toward the bed and threw her down on it. Like I said, I'm not one of your minions who snaps to whenever you bat an eyelash. She righted herself on the bed. I don't treat you like that, and you know it. But let me tell you this right now. Don't you dare think you can toss me around either. I'm not some meek little girl you can have your way with. She started to rise, but he pushed her back down. Oh, yeah? Let's just see about that. He knelt on the bed, came toward her. Bree rolled to the other side and rose quickly, but he grabbed her by the back of her swimsuit and jerked, and she flew backwards onto the bed. Stop this right now, she ordered, her irritation evident. He pinned her down. Where'd you get off talking to me like that? You don't give me orders. No one gives me orders. He held her down. Get off me, she screamed. His hand clamped down across her mouth, and he laughed. I'm just going to show you who's boss. She bucked, fought, and struggled against his strength. By the time he realized he'd let himself get out of control, the deed was done. He'd lost his temper, and that was something he needed to tamp down. He looked down at her tear-stained face. Man, I'm sorry, Bree, really. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Can I get up, please? She asked softly, showing no emotion. He moved off her. Bree stood shakily, went into the bathroom, and quietly closed the door. And that is the end of chapter 2.